Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for another webinar here on Food Industry Executive. My name is Amanda, and I'm excited to have you all here for today's presentation. Before we dive in, just a couple of housekeeping items. First, if you have any questions at all, please drop those into the questions panel. Second, we will send out the recording at the end of the event, so please keep an eye on your inbox for that. And without further ado, I'm thrilled to introduce you to improving your food business while meeting new safety requirements. Casey is a senior consultant and project manager for CAI software. He is a seasoned food industry technology expert with 17 years of experience solving problems for food processors and distributors. With a robust background in supply chain optimization and regulatory requirements, Casey has a proven track record of helping businesses navigate heightened customer demands and complex safety standards while enhancing operational efficiency. And with that, I'll pass it over to you. Thanks, Casey.
Thanks very much. And welcome, everyone. Thanks for taking the time out of your day to attend. Today, what I'd like to do is share some of the thoughts that I've gathered over those last 17 years, working with Food Connects and our customers, meeting business requirements for food safety and other reporting and efficiency requirements that we've encountered. The topic of the moment, which we're going to get into, is our Food Safety Modernization Act. You've all had about 15 years to get familiar with it, so we're going to be a little bit brief in the introduction here. If you're not familiar, if you're new to the industry, please check out on the FDA. They have a great site there that gives a breakdown of the FSMA, who it is going to affect, and the acronyms you'll hear about it. The Modernization Act has been with us for about 15 years now. We are about a year out, a year and a little bit more, from Section 204 coming online. What that is going to be is a rule that requires those who manufacture, process, pack, or hold foods on the Food Traceability List, or FTL, to maintain records containing key data elements, or KDEs, that are associated with critical tracking events, CTEs. Short form on that one, your one up, one down traceability, to say where you received your product from and where it's going to be going to, along with a new traceability number, a traceability lot code, and traceability lot code source. We'll have some additional documentation requirements along the way. What we're going to see as challenges from bringing this safety requirement online is some additional paperwork, whether that's going to be traditional paper or electronic, ideally electronic for you, and a requirement to add lot control tracking from the receipt of the product to the sale of the product and any transformation in between for some products that had not previously had that. Now, the food traceability list includes a number of items. FDA has coverage over shell eggs, cucumbers, leafy greens, melons, fresh cut fruits, fin fish like tuna and swordfish, and then ready-to-eat deli salads. The exhaustive list is in that link set there. What we want to look at is across those different industries and subsections of our industry, what additional challenges are being added and who may be affected by it. Now that we've set the baseline for the FSMA, let's take a little bit of a look at the industry for adoption, technology, innovation, and regulation. Across most industries, we can define that into a couple of segments. We're going to have innovators, early adopters, an early majority, the late majority, and then laggards. Now, if we're talking specifically about the adoption of the requirements, we are about a year out, as we mentioned. So to hit the minimum requirement to track your paperwork, we are seeing most folks are in the early majority or coming up on the late majority. That's to hit your minimum tracking. Most folks have some methods in there. Some of the industries are a little bit ahead of that. Folks that are handling things like our shellfish and some of our fish and seafoods, they have had those requirements for quite a long time with their shellfish tags and other such options. For some of the newer items that are being added, some of the cucumbers, leafy greens, fruits, and that sort of thing, where lot control is not as prevalent, those we've seen some innovators already coming on board over the last 10, 15 years. We've got more coming in. Overall, though, what we don't want to focus on is the requirement itself. That requirement is not going to give you much in the way of a competitive advantage or an improvement. We want to look at the innovations you can build around that requirement and where everyone tends to be. So on our far left side of the life cycle, we have our innovators. They are our high risk, high reward trailblazing companies. They are going to see the largest benefit from the early adoption of their technology at the highest risk. On the far right side of our adoption life cycle, we have our laggards. This is the group that's going to be dragged along, kicking and screaming, as there is no competitive advantage left to be earned. The industry has already moved on past this. For this group, adoption is going to be extremely low risk. It's already a proven adoption method, but every penny spent there is just a penalty. Where we are now overall, for most of the sections in the industry, are early adopters for innovation. So we have seen innovations in the traceability and tracking brought on even before the FSMA existed. More than 15 years ago, I was already speaking with folks who were doing traceability adaptations. We were looking at tracking product, whether that happened to be straight from the farm, single source products, where we're able to prove back to the farm it is. Some of our fish where we have harvesting, and then of course shellfish, which have for a long time been doing harvest date, harvest location, and passing that information through. So there are innovations that can be built into the adoption of the requirement, and that's where we want to look at. Right now, overall, I would say that the industry is in the early adopter phase for the innovations. They are in the early majority phase for the requirements themselves. Now, why do I think that we're in the early adopter phase when we're 1 year out on a 15-year plan for this set? Primarily because of the pains that I'm hearing expressed through the industry. What I am hearing from the clients that I work with, as well as the prospects that we see come in, is discussions about changes to their business workflow. They're talking about a moving target and changing requirements, multiple requirements coming in from different customers and vendors, the cost of the adoption of these plans, and then limitations for the people or the workforce that they have, who they're going to control it. What I don't hear right now is the innovation pain points. Innovation pain points were at the start of this program or the start of the discussion. Innovators tend to come to us with a conversation that is more straightforward. I want to improve my business because I need a safer business. For the FSMA, very rarely do I hear a customer come to us and say, my business is not safe enough. Their business is already safe. They've already got those requirements handled. I would imagine most of the people on the line with us do as well. In fact, I believe for those who signed up, we had over 50% of the attendees have a quality assurance title to them, which is a title that I did not hear much 15, 17 years ago when I got started in the industry. When I started hearing people talking about the lot control projects that we were working on, they tended to have compliance titles, or they tended to have special project manager titles. That there is a quality assurance title out there indicates that a lot of the industry has already taken on some of that innovation and it's started to spread. Where I'm hearing now, those pain points are the mix has started, the innovators have hit their high points. We're now looking at the changes to the business workflow and the hassle associated with bringing these innovations on board. I don't think we're past this point, though. I don't think we're into the early and late majority phase, because I am not yet hearing the pain points of messy existing business workflows. We don't have a lot of workarounds in place yet, which is great. If we can get some of the innovations in place prior to building the bad habits, that helps implement cleanly and get the most advantage. I'm also not yet hearing requirements based on competition. There are a few out there who are in specialty sectors where we have single source farms, single locations tracking back to a particular fish or site. quality assurance, quality-based grading, some of the sushi grade products, those will have some mention of competitors having a leg up on them already, but it is not so prevalent that I'm getting a majority of calls coming in saying that their competitor already has this underway. They need to catch up. We start to hear that as we come through those phases. That's not a pain point that I've heard yet. The other one that tends to come up as we move later into the phase is there are specific customers, vendors, or opportunities that are going to require the adoption of a point of innovation. Normally that'll be associated with a EDI transaction where we are going to start forcing the exchange of electronic data, passing those traceability lot control codes, traceability lot sources along electronically rather than including them on a paper document. So we are still a bit ahead of the curve there. The last one we tend to hear as we move further down the line, rather than talking about the cost of adoption or the limited people and workforce that they have available to them, we start talking about lost opportunity costs. Once we move further along in that path or timeline, we start feeling the pain of missing out. We did not get in ahead of the curve. We waited too long. So that's where some of those pain and opportunity sets go. So with that all said, the FSMA is going to be requiring us to pass along additional information. We're going to be working to capture more data within our own systems, and we're going to be sharing that data out, either receiving product information in from our vendors, so getting a share from them, or sharing that to our customers we pass along. I'm glossing over a little bit here about transformation of product within our own system. If we are transforming product, we may have to take one of those traceability lot code numbers that we brought in, associate that with new lot numbers that are being made to pass that along. Those types of systems are specific to processors or repackage. Of course, some of those are available, but we'll hold off on that specific topic for the moment. What we want to look at is where we can start to pick up some of those benefits. How do we turn that requirement and that meeting of those baselines into benefits for your system? The first area that we want to look at is going to be cost control, techniques for managing and reducing the cost. It's a little obvious. Time is money. Of course, when we are adding additional requirements, we are looking at adding additional time to the processes that you have. For FSMA, the lot control requirements that they are going to be adding on, you would be looking at minimally documentation coming in from your vendor, from your supplier, or if you're doing harvesting or first packaging yourself, to set up a traceability number. Now that could be as easy as on the vendor's purchase order, on the vendor's invoice coming in from you or ASN coming in from you, or on your own purchase order, recording that information. One extra line of data, no problem at all there. Once that product has been received in-house, we just have to identify what that lot number is. So ideally we have a label or something written down, or we're referencing back to a spreadsheet. Again, no big deal. We just have one extra piece of data to carry along. And then as we sell that product out, we're going to record that product out on the invoice there, one extra piece of data. Each of those extra pieces of data that I just mentioned, though, is probably going to be doubling the amount of data entry that one of your key workers is doing. So your receiving team is going to be doubling the amount of data in. It's not just going to be one case of cucumbers. It's going to be one 10-pound case of cucumbers from Green Farm with lot number 10037. So we've now increased the amount of information that they need to write down and record. For our shellfish folks and for our fish folks, you're already doing this. I can hear you already. Absolutely. But what we want to look at is how much effort is that taking? As we add on new rules, will that require the addition of more employees, more labor? If that labor is coming in, human effort, human labor tends to be linear or additive. If we add an additional person, they are going to provide 8 hours of additional labor. That is all we get from them. Whereas if we take a look at techniques to manage that, if we look at systemizing that effort, we can get a force multiplier out of it. If you only have one person doing the recording and adding a second person, you're probably okay. You've just doubled your labor cost. If we have 10 people, however, and we can add a system rather than adding an additional 11th person, instead of just getting one more, we get all of that doubled up or by that multiplier. So we can have 10 people do the work of 20, one doing the work of 2, sets our scale there. Where we want to look at that, how much labor do we have invested in it? For the FSMA, we should have reasonable amounts of labor, but our data entry is going to be doubling up. Next area for our cost control areas is going to be the actual money is money or cost is money or is inventory is money. However, we like to express that we have product that we will be tracking additional information on. For this, it is a good opportunity to look back at what you are currently using for inventory controls, cost controls, and management. Look for the common tracking points that you're going to be adding. So for the FSMA, we're going to be recording how much is inbound, so how much we've received, the lot number we've received and where it came from. Basically information you're already going to be having on a purchase order or on a receiving document, ASN or bill of lading that you're receiving in. What we want to avoid here is not taking advantage of that time, cost, and money being spent and allowing it to be two separate documents being recorded. It is surprisingly common to have clients that don't yet do purchase orders, that don't yet do outbound purchase documents prior to receiving their product in. The common excuse that, of course, I'll hear is we don't have time. But they have the time to receive it at the dock, count it in, and write up two separate logging documents, one that goes up to the office for the invoice to be generated to pay out to the vendor, one that's going to go into storage for the lot control or for the FSMA reporting. By taking the time to combine those two, we add that additional tracking. And since we're going to be keeping track of the lots of the product coming in, and we can now associate that with the lots that are being sold out, we can start to better track the information, do things like age our inventory better, so do our aging by lots for product rotation and aging. We can have additional quality control on whether there are credit memos or product complaints being issued from the sales side, carrying that back through. A lot of that information is currently obscured by having separate systems set up or lost by not having those purchase orders and those purchase reports structured for them. So for our cost control techniques, we want to make sure we're keeping our labor in check. We want to make sure we're keeping our product and inventory in check and tracking that information back through. Once we have that product information in place, we can then run our reports and our visibility on it in order to make good decisions about purchasing, good decisions about tracking our inventory and quality. For the comment that I have here about purpose-built tools increasing the profitability, the example that I had is way back 15, 17, maybe getting a little longer than that. When I first went out to the meat and seafood areas and saw the different uses of the scales. Rail scales blew my mind, hanging the beef there and sending it along. Floor scales, bench scales, washdown scales, all these different opportunities. And each one had a specific use and had a significant investment, but has turned around over time. Where I see that moving forward now is in discussions about the paper documents, paper invoices, ASNs, bill of lading that I mentioned, EDI, which is our electronic document interface or interchange, allowing you to send that information back and forth. And then specific systems like TR5, which would have been Trace Register, or Blue Trace, which are specific lot and inventory tracking options available for the seafood industry. A scale is just going to record a weight for you. How you get to that weight, the efficiency with which you can get the weight recorded and then passed along to the next step, is what gets you the benefit. So way back when, bench scales would have been fine. Drop it on the bench scale. You just need someone strong enough to pick it up and move it to the next one. Rail scales give us a way to move that product through with a brief pause to capture the weight and continue it on without an interruption. That is what we're looking for here, is we are looking for options to increase the efficiency, reduce the costs, gain the profitability. Where we're going to be seeing that in this area is going to be on the EDI exchange, on ways to reduce the amount of data capture that you're going to need to do personally, and then to reduce the amount of data capture or data re-entry that is going to be needed by your customers. Areas that we're also going to want to touch in on is any production workstations and labeling that you're going to be doing to capture the data effectively once it's moving around the warehouse. Now, we talked a little bit about how that data comes in. So we're receiving in our case of cucumbers. We had a lot number 100037 written down from Green Farm. That's what we're going to need to maintain in our records, and we're going to need to pass along to the customer. Where that frequently breaks down and where we're going to have some opportunities for a conversation is how that is going to stay with the product and how that is going to be passed along to your customer on the next stage. Now, just about everybody is going to be familiar with a, I'm blurred out, GS1 128 barcode there. You'll see that on a great number of food products, but it is not as common in the fresh fruit and produce area as it is in some of the seafood meats. So the seafood and the meats have for a long time had the lot control requirements. So that GS1 128 barcode is going to have encoding or data in it to identify the product, one of the requirements that we have for the FSMA. It's going to have information in it about when that product was packaged or possibly the expiration date. Another of the pieces of information is going to be the date that the product was set. Normally, we're going to have weight information that makes it easier to ship and receive. So we'll have that built in there in that code. And then the last area that we're usually going to have in that barcode is going to be a serial number, lot number, or some combination of it that can be used or can contain the traceability lot code that is going to be required for the FSMA. So in an ideal situation, this is all electronic and we don't have to do anything. That's a little unlikely with our current scenario. Next step is we want to make sure we've got good labeling available. So we want to use a good barcode label that a human can quickly look at, get the data that they need, lot information, lot source information, record that down. If the customers that you'll be working with will only have manual options available. Next step up, better option for them if they have the ability to use a barcode scanner and record that information to their system by scanning in that barcode. We've just saved them a step. That's where we're going to see some integrations to work with your supply chain. So up and down the supply chain, get tools and techniques to improve the visibility. Big one here that I've identified, purchase orders. It's a odd conversation to have, to talk to our clients and say, yes, you have been working without them for some time. Let's get them in play. Let's start to formalize those requests and have them come through. Frequently, we're going to see that improving farm and boat forecasts as well as production forecasts if we think about a purchase order from your own company as a work order. So we have some scheduling options there. And of course, information from your vendors. Methods that we're going to streamline that is we're going to start looking at purchase orders electronically, inbound and outbound, and getting forecast updates. What we want to start talking about is getting the information that's going to be required for the FSMA compliance as early as possible, and including with that information updates on forecasts, whether that's an advanced shipping notice, confirmations to move it back and forth. The benefits that your company will pick up by doing these sets will be visibility into shorts and changes, as well as referencing back to the product quality and cost itself. How often do we have product that is going to fail to move forward, whether through spoilage breakage, shrinkage, etc. The areas that we saw this happen, one of my early customers, Common Market, at that time of Philadelphia, now Mid-Atlantic and other locations, they were a very early adopter of an innovator in the marketplace for recording products, where those products were coming from for fresh fruits and vegetables, identifying the farm, assigning a lot number to it, getting the barcode information or the label information on those products, and then distributing those in the local area and later on nationally. Lancaster Farm Fresh, a cooperative, doing a similar process where they are bringing in a great deal of product in a very short amount of time, turning it around, labeling that product, tracking the lots, tracking the vendors, and passing it through. Now, those companies I would rank as innovators. They invested and executed on the traceability and the lot control aspects many years ago. Probably about the same time as the FSMA itself was initially being drafted, but they were ahead of the game there. Now, they've had many years to benefit from them. I'm happy to say that they've both grown over the years. But as we're coming up on this next round of requirements, they are also going to be facing some of the challenges working with their vendors, working with the farms, working with their clients. Some of the additional pieces from the FSMA, without digging in too deeply here, is we're going to see, for folks working with farms, the requirement to identify when the original traceability lot code is generated, what farm site, farm location, or farm plot that product was brought in from. Now, there are many layers to that requirement. Please make sure you've reviewed those videos over on the FDA website for the additional information. But what that's doing is that is making additional data elements that they need to now fit into their system to pass along as they are doing their sales and as they're doing their processing. They were ahead of the curve. So for them, that was a fairly straightforward execution. They'll be able to add additional attributes, additional piece of information into the methods that they've set without having to double up on the data entry that's happening from any individual person, or double up on the data entry that's necessary to maintain their chain. That's what gives them the ability to continue their growth without a straight line add of more hours equals more effort. They can add more hours and gain more than the hours they put in. They've got that labor multiplier there. With that communication, those particular groups happen to be working very well with their farms. They're sending out their purchase orders. They are getting in their farm estimates. They are updating that information. They're able to track and maintain. They see their lot information ahead of time and then carry that through to the sales effort or to any processing and production that they're doing in the middle. Excuse me, double click there. So what we want to do is turn that compliance effort into competitive advantages by innovating in the area where those requirements are. Right now, we're going to see that compliance as an opportunity. We have the ability to protect brands. So food safety is all about keeping people safe, but at the same time, the performative aspect of it, the ability to show that you're keeping people safe, is what builds up that brand and how we can execute on that. Some of you may recall that Boar's Head suffered a recall recently, and as they were doing so, they were able to quickly execute on or provide information to the appropriate parties on what the scope of that was. If we think back several years prior to that, when there was a ground beef recall that effectively recalled all the ground beef in the industry over the course of several years. The difference between them is how well they have innovated in the area as compared to just meeting the minimum requirements, and what they are able to do to protect their brand in the event of a recall or set. Additional information here is going to be in our service differentiation, or basically what services we're able to provide as compared to another company in the market. if you are able to state, and there's not a lot that I've heard say this yet, that you are FSMA ready, that you are done, it is executed. That is a service level that not many clients I've heard have said yet. I definitely hear them say we will be ready. I hear them say we will be prepared for it. They will be able to execute on it because the rule doesn't start for another year or so. But I haven't heard too many step up and say, we're done, it's ready, it's complete. That is going to set you apart from others who have not. In order to do that ahead of time, you're going to need to innovate though, because otherwise you're just adding more people. If you're just adding more people and more time, then you are paying that over and over again. If we're looking on the innovations in the systems, we can get that force multiplier there. Other compliance opportunity we have is to become a trusted partner and an advisor. This is knowing your stuff and taking some of the burden off of those who are maybe a little on the late majority or maybe even in the laggard area of the implementation and helping to guide them forward by putting their trust in you, by treating you as an advisor and as a partner in the business that they have in that whole supply chain. You can take on that role, you can improve your supply chain, and by doing so, you protect your own brand by helping those who are further down the chain or further up the chain from you to protect themselves. You gain a measure of that protection because a recall, unfortunately, can start as soon as you sell the product to someone who is not maintaining their information appropriately. We want to give them all the tools there. Additional services that you may consider offering. You may offer your expertise as a service in and of itself. There are options out there to act as advisors, to act as inspectors, to assist your company. I happened to have mentioned Boar's Head earlier. We did some work with them several years ago, and one of the areas that they did a tremendous job with is working with their distributors, so working with the people one step down the line, that their training for their distributors and their training as to how they would present themselves, what type of equipment they would be using, what they should expect to execute was very impressive. Now, they built their brand on that service, and I don't want to know if I say they charged, but they definitely got the value back that they invested in those distributors by giving that level of expertise. It is a premium brand, it is a premium service, and that all comes from a vendor or a producer taking the opportunity to pass along to the next steps of the chain that level of expertise, that level of training, and those resources available there. Along with that as a service, you might also have that as value-added services or products that you may be able to demand additional margin for. That could be things like custom labeling for clients for those who are not going to be able to do barcode scanning or may be looking to do barcode scanning, to include that there, to have things like QR codes to allow for scanning of a product to go all the way back to the service. That's similar to a Blue Trace or Trace Register TR5 style system, as well as additional case and packaging sizes to help folks who have become accustomed to processes that are going to be more difficult to do once the FSMA rules take effect. Some of those things would be, for example, if our case of 10-pound cucumbers, we have distributors who are going to be taking 5 of those pounds out, splitting that case in half, and selling those to different customers. At this point, they're going to be taking on the burden of labeling and tracking that split, depending on what steps they have in that transformation, whether it is a pure repack that may be allowed to carry the same traceable lot code forward, or if this is going to add additional product to it, if it's going to be transformative, as in they're doing cutting or processing where a new lot code number may need to generate. Talking to the customers and seeing if you carrying a 5-pound case instead of a 10-pound case may be valuable enough to them that you would be able to cover the cost of the packaging and the labor that you have and come out with a profitable item. That is a area that I gained a fair bit of experience on many years ago. It happened to be a meat and sausage distributor at that time where they could not regularly sell their 20-pound cases. They were constantly fighting with their customers to either try and apply an upcharge for broken case or sell the discounted 20-pound cases. And it was a constant back and forth through the sales team of the price going up, the price coming down, the packaging, the hassle, and the loss of traceability or the loss of labeling that happened once a case was opened. The eventual decision was made to set a half-size case, a 10-pound case, available, to have a new product line that charged a slightly higher margin, covered the cost of the packaging, and those sold quite well to the point where, for convenience sake, people were buying multiples of the 10-pound item, gaining the company a higher profitability because those held a little bit more margin while giving them the flexibility for the implementation. And that was a reasonably straightforward change of packaging sizes. That is the ability to take this compliance requirement that we know that everyone in the industry is going to be hit with for their specific areas within the next year and a half, to turn that into a advantage that you can offer. Because if you are the first one in the market or in your area of the marketplace offering that as a solution, you can present that you have the solution to the FSMA challenge that your customers are going to face, that they will just need to keep the bill of lading, the invoice, whatever that document is that you're going to be sending out to them, that will already have the appropriate lot information, vendor information, lot control source information recorded, that you may even have an electronic version of that. You're going to send them a spreadsheet. You are going to generate for them a report of everything that they've purchased on a daily, weekly, monthly basis, so that they don't even need to do the compilation of that. Or ideally, they're working with a system that can pull that information in and ingest it automatically. Giving them those options builds your expertise, your reputation, makes you a trusted partner and advisor, and gives you an option to add value and demand profitability for it on what you're providing. Now, some of the examples that I have here are from quite a few years ago. Packaging information, scanning information has been around for a long time. The adoption of it, though, has been slow. The option to automate versus the option to run something down by hand. Pencils are cheap, paper is cheap, and everybody likes having a job. So that is what the heel dragging that we see in the industry tends to be, is that resistance to change, the ease, air quotes ease, of implementation of a paper-based system, and then the will handle it with labor later on solution. And that is where I would recommend for all the quality assurance folks that are on the line with us now, and any business owners that are also happening to listen, take a look at the pains that you're expressing right now. Listen to yourself as you talk, bounce it around the office. Say, hey, what is the hassle that we have going on right now with the FSMA? I seriously doubt that you're going to hear anybody say our product isn't safe. That's a disastrous response. If you hear that response, jump on that immediately. But I have a good amount of faith in the industry. Most of the folks that I've worked with over the years are doing well above and beyond this base level minimum. What is the challenge there is showing that, demonstrating that level of safety so that you can elevate your brand, bring up that performative aspect to the safety that you're doing, and make that presentation in an efficient and manageable way. So FSMA is going to give us some baselines, some new baselines to do to say we are passing that information along. We want to elevate just that minimum, do some innovation, bring that performance in. We want to look at doing that in a cost-efficient way. We want to reduce the amount of labor. Take a look at as those requirements come through, what you're doing right now to record your receives, record your sales. You're going to need to make a change. If you're not already covering the FSMA, if you're not already 100% confident, there is some change going to be made. Let's look at investing that pain you're going to be going through, that hassle that we hear in the industry that we don't want to change, into something that we can benefit from. As we look at that benefits, let's reduce the cost that you already have on the receive, on the sale. Make sure we don't see any of those costs increase. We don't take any additional labor time to execute that. You can definitely do that with a reasonable system in place. You can even manage that with some spreadsheets if you need to, but we're happy to talk to you about some of the other options. Once we've got that done, look at other areas where your quality assurance, quality control, inventory management are ending up in silos, isolated from one another. Take that investment that you're going to be doing for the compliance here, gain the benefit for your inventory management. Cycle counts, physical counts, inventory management, POs in, yields out, all those things that tend to be your inventory manager's job in one area, your purchase manager's job in another, and your quality assurance person's in a third, maintaining their own separate castles or silos of information. We want to get that all tied back together so that when there is a receipt of product and you receive that lot number in, you can say, this is our lot number or our reference number. It came in on this date. It should be aged out on that date. We have that information recorded, readily available for the rest of the team, so you can continue that set through. As we pull that set out to your customers, pass that information along and make sure you're taking that compliance, raising your brand awareness, raising your expertise level, and then demanding the value that that represents as it goes through. As we come through, I just want to take a quick second to thank 3 of the customers that we've been working with over the years that I referenced a few times in here. Actually, I didn't mention Inland Seafood or Fortune Fish's name, but they are some of the folks that I've been working with over the years on the seafood side. As we get ready for that, please, if you have any questions, fill those out, submit those in, and we'll take a few minutes to do so. But I do want to make sure I pass along to the Common Market, to Inland Seafood, and to Fortune Fish. Very much thanks for your participation. They have been kind enough over the years to provide us with case studies. So if you would like to take a look at some real world results on implementing or innovating while you are still in that innovator stage or that early adopter stage, as compared to the penalties or the pain that you accept from waiting until that laggard stage or to that late adopter stage, we'd be happy to have that conversation come through. And as we move over to the questions section, did we have any questions that we wanted to address?
Hi, Casey. Thank you. We do have a couple questions for you. And the first is, do you think enforcement really begins in January of 2026?
Yes. So enforcement, it is due in January of 2026. The FDA guidelines do outline that there is a inspection period that won't start until the next year. So the requirements begin there. Inspections are not expected to demand it for about another year. So there is still some shuffle time. As I believe they stated, they prefer to educate before they enforce, but the deadline is fast approaching. I would not recommend waiting any further beyond that.
Thank you. The next one is, can companies continue to use paper logs and still comply with FSMA?
Paper logs are acceptable within the FSMA rules. They do state that those logs can be done pencil and paper style, but for submission in as requested, usually for recall or other research capabilities. In special situations, they will require that to be transferred to a sortable spreadsheet. They have provided several examples of those sortable spreadsheets on their site, so I would highly recommend staying ahead of that, as they are, I believe, a 24-hour period or whatever they agree to requirement to get that into a sortable spreadsheet. So that is sort of falls into the solving today's problem with tomorrow's labor. You might end up in the unwanted situation of having to scramble to translate old invoices, old purchase orders, old receiving documents into a spreadsheet and move that forward. Those are the opportunities where we are going to see mistakes happen. When we're rushed is when we make mistakes, especially if we're transcribing lots of little numbers. And that's where turning that information over or demonstrating, failing to demonstrate confidence in your traceability information expands the scope of recalls. That is one of the big dangers that you would have that the FSMA is not yet directly addressing, but is definitely moving towards. The ability to ensure that you have recalled the appropriate scope of product without letting it stretch. And a lot of the information that we see addressing that is getting that scope pulled back. So a recall can be performed safely. We can ensure that the safety is there, the appropriate products are being pulled from the shelves or identified without seeing the expansion like we've seen far too many times where everything has to get recalled because someone didn't track where 1 or 2 or 3 or 10 cases went, could have been commingled. So the paperwork is a possible solution, but it is not a recommended one, and you will need to convert it to a sortable spreadsheet to submit it back to the FDA.
And how long does implementing a traceability system normally take?
Traceability systems uh, generally, and this is all very dependent on the size and scope of your facility, you're going to be looking at a 3-month implementation for a fairly straightforward one step up, one step down, or one step through the process traceability. So that would be receiving goods in, recording traceability information, lot numbers, possibly associating that with the serial number of box, storing that in inventory, and then sending that out. For each step that you have beyond that, or each site that you are moving that through, you'll normally want to add a month to the implementation timeline. Now, that's at a small business scope. Once we start moving to medium and large scale systems or enterprise, those implementations tend to take longer. It is not usually the traceability aspect that stretches that out so much as it is the desire to affect other systems while that's taking place. If we purely focus on traceability, the steps are numerous, but not complicated. So traceability is easy, but you have to follow the steps. And so the FSMA should be a very tackleable situation in a 3 to 4 month period, but that is on a traceability focus. Normally, we're going to see that also tied in with some of the benefits that you would see through a system implementation, whether that's going to be sales, profitability, purchase orders, that sort of thing. So plan for longer. Don't wait until 3 months before January. I say don't try and do this in October of next year. That's a little bit too late. Make sure we've got everything settled so we can see benefits to the traceability rather than just getting the minimum amount done.
Fabulous. And the final question for today is, what mistakes have you seen clients make that you wish folks wouldn't make again?
Oh, I think the one that irks me personally, because I've spent some time doing implementations as well as doing the consulting side, is turning over the project or turning over the implementation without providing the authority. And I would say for the 50% of the attendees who are in the quality assurance role, make sure you have that authority and that you carry that forward as you work through these implementations. And that's, I'm not sure if it's a mistake or it's a situation. It's the one that's stuck with me the longest because it is the hardest to overcome, where we have a conflict in similarly positioned people. So whether we happen to be at the, at the vice level, if we're at the C level, if we're at the manager level, where we have one of the people involved in the implementation that is on board and agrees, and we have somebody who, for whatever reason, is holding back. We really need to make sure that either we have the authority figure saying this is the way it's going to be, communicate that extremely clearly to your team so that the folks down below can move forward quickly, because a traceability safety structure can be derailed or skunked by someone not doing their job, or it can be made much more difficult by someone who refuses to execute on what they need. The didn't happen to be FSMA, but just got off a call a little while ago where one of our clients was commenting that some of his drivers were dropping off product. And when challenged to say, you dropped off 4 cases instead of 8 cases, the driver replied, "I don't remember. I only fill out my drop sheets when I get back to the office." So that level of willful ignorance on why it's important to do it at the appropriate time can 100% get in the way of a safety implementation. It is the toxic mistake is not having full agreement or enforcement from above to say that we're getting this done.
Great, thank you so much. And thank you, Casey, for the excellent presentation. That's it for today, but keep an eye on your inbox for the recording of the event and have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, everybody.